and welcome to the Merri-Cast, the show that puts you on the fast track to business confidence. The people I interview here have either given me my business confidence directly or inspired me in other ways. 10 years ago, I was a part-time presenter on our local radio station, and I interviewed a new startup focused on SEO called Wagada, run by Cheryl Luzet. 10 years on, and Cheryl has 20 employees, and she's broadened her offer to include brand building and wider digital marketing services. So, how did she get from there to here? Well, I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Cheryl has good sense and anecdotes coming out of her ears, including one about why you should always break open the Prosecco when things go wrong. Listen out for that one. But let's take a trip back in time. When I first spoke to Cheryl all those years ago, she was only just getting going. So I asked her to remind me why she'd set up the business in the first place.
That's a really great question. So I was working for a consultancy in London and I was doing quite similar things. We worked with quite a lot of publishing houses. So we used to make resources or electronic resources to go with big textbooks and search engine optimization, that sort of thing. A lot of usability of websites. And I had my second child and I added up the cost of childcare and my train fare into London. And I realized that I would only earn £5 a day if I went back to my previous job.
Right.
And however much I love my previous job, I didn't really want to work for £5 a day. And yet my husband's a teacher, so he doesn't have a massive salary. So I knew that I'd have to work. So I was in a bit of a dilemma, really, in that I couldn't afford to work, and yet I couldn't afford not to work either. So I said to myself, well, maybe I can get some freelance work locally. You know, I didn't kind of set out thinking I would grow this big business and I would employ 20 people. You know, it was very much what can I do to put food on the table in the short term and then see where it leads me. So I started off by doing quite a lot of networking because I didn't really have any local contacts. I was, all my previous jobs have been in London, and I think it just took off really. It took off much quicker than I could even have expected. I think there were a lot of changes in search engine optimization at that point, and I was in a really good position to help clients to kind of embrace those changes. And yeah, within a couple of years, I had an office, I had staff, and it all kind of grown a lot quicker than I'd ever expected, really.
Did you like the networking side of things? I mean, a lot of people say they don't like networking. Was it something you had to push yourself through a pain barrier, or was it just something you just really liked anyway?
It's really interesting because I was absolutely petrified and I'd never really done any networking apart from going to one networking meeting in an old job where I just stood in a corner and just felt really embarrassed. And actually, I now absolutely adore it. It's my favorite thing ever. And I would encourage anyone to give it a try because I think it's very easy to assume that it's terrifying and you're never going to enjoy it. But actually, it can be really great fun and you can meet some really, really interesting people. I've met some really good friends networking. I think it's probably not for everyone. I think you've got to be someone that likes to meet new people and likes to have a chat and likes that small talk. But if you do, I think you can get quite a lot out of it. And it's been really good for my business. Even though we're a marketing company, we still get most of our work through referrals and through contacts. We've got clients all across the world, but they've all come through someone who knows someone who knows someone. So I would definitely recommend it as a way of kind of kickstarting your business.
It's interesting, how word of mouth and reputation are still so important and always will be, I guess, important. I mean, was there a moment early on where you thought this isn't working or I need to get out more? Or was there a moment of sort of struggle or pain where you kind of doubted whether you were doing the right thing? I'm interested in that, though, those kind of key pivot moments where you either thought, let's push on or not sure.
Yes, it's a really good point. I think every business goes through kind of ebbs and flows, and it's a bit like people say about waiting for a bus. Like you wait for a bus, and then one doesn't come along for ages. And even now, the sales process very much works like that. That you get all the buses come at once, and then all the buses seem to dry up. And I don't know how this happens. That everyone seems to be in the same mentality that they either want some marketing work or they don't. So I've definitely had quite a few moments where you suddenly panic and think I'm not quite sure what I did to make it work before, and I'm not quite sure why it's not working now, but for some reason, we're not getting the leads that we want to, we're not getting the conversions that we want to. We had a whole period at the beginning of last year, actually, where sales were just completely dry, and we've never had that ever. We've always had new clients coming on board all the time. And I think it's very easy to start doubting yourself, but I think you just have to hold your nerve sometimes and just, be quite self-critical and say, am I doing the right thing? Is this meeting the needs of my clients? And if you're confident that you are, then just kind of have to hold your nerve and hold in there until that period goes and the buses all start coming back again.
Yeah, it's interesting, all these analogies. Your one is about buses, mine is sort of shaking apples out of the tree. And I just suddenly had a big load of apples come down at the end of the autumn after quite a dry summer. And it does sort of ebb and flow. I mean, but then when you start employing people, did you feel an extra sort of sense of kind of responsibility? Well, it's not just about me anymore. I'm interested in that kind of dynamic because, obviously you then have it's like having an extra sort of set of children, if you like. You've got people there that you are responsible for.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. And it does change everything. And I think I probably waited too long before I employed people. I felt like it was such a massive jump, and one that once you go down that road, you can't really go back very easily. So I probably waited a good 6 months too long before making that jump and worked myself into the ground during that period while I tried to do all the jobs that other people should have been doing. And I think when you do take that person on, it does take a little while for them to start generating that return on investment, because obviously then you have to go out and find work that fills their time and your time, and suddenly it does change the game quite a lot, because I took an office at the same time as I took my first team member on, and the costs suddenly go up exponentially. Suddenly you've got overheads from having no overheads, working from home, only having yourself. It does change the dynamic of your business quite a lot, and you do have to kind of grow up a little bit in that time and say, actually, I need to have a cash flow and I need to know what I'm doing now.
Did you kind of sort of learn to manage during that period? Had you had previous experience of managing folk, or or is managing people in your own business sort of quite different?
I'd been probably a very low level manager before, so I certainly wasn't an experienced manager when I started employing people. And I think, I'd been a manager in a much larger organization where there's always someone to turn to, or there's an HR person to turn to, or there's my manager to turn to. It was certainly the first time that it had been, it all fallen back onto my shoulders to make sure that I was doing the right thing and that I was getting sort of the HR side of things right, and that I was treating people in the way that I would have wanted to be treated myself. So yes, it is a massive jump. And I think particularly during those first few years of employing people, the business was growing a little bit faster than my skills were growing, and I was running to catch up with it. So It was great that I was constantly upskilling, but I did feel I was running after something at that time, and the business was kind of getting there a bit faster than I was.
Did you feel like, I'm interested in that because, if your business is evolving faster than your skills are, is it on you to catch up, or is it on you to kind of invest the skills into the others around you as you're going? Because I think there is a tendency for business owners to feel like everything is on them and that they need to do this and they need to do that. But did it take you a little while to adjust in that sense as well? That actually it doesn't matter if I don't have the skill because employee number 1 or 2 has that skill now.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think there's a big thing that you have to get it into your head that you have to employ people that are better at doing things than you are. And I think that's always a tricky one, because you feel like, as the boss, that you should know everything and that you should be the expert on everything, but actually you can't. But one of the challenges that I found in the early days was obviously when you're a very small business, it's not quite as an attractive proposition to come and work for you as I say it is for me now that I have 20 staff and we have a really nice office. So actually I think probably the quality of the staff that I was attracting was maybe not as good as I would have liked, and also I probably wasn't able to pay the salaries that other companies were able to pay. So actually it was quite a tricky time, and it took a while before I started to be able to recruit the right people, what felt like the right people in the business that could actually support me. I felt like some of the people I attracted in the early days thought that coming to work for a very small business would be kind of like an easy life. They've had corporate careers before. They'll come work for this small local business and actually it will be a lot easier for them. And it's not. It's actually a lot harder working for a small local business. So I definitely think that was one of my challenges. Maybe it was also the fact that I wasn't choosing the right people. I didn't know who I needed at that point. And I think with time, you learn who the right people are for your business.
Tell me about, though, so you've got a couple of people on board and things are sort of developing and progressing and so on. Were you excited or were you scared during that period? Because there's a lot of potential for either. As I'm finding out at the moment, that do you feel excited about the future, but also you feel, whoa, this is getting a bit out of the comfort zone, but you kind of have to push through that, do you think?
No, I agree, actually. I think there was definitely a part where I was getting quite scared because it was growing at a much faster rate than I was able to keep up with. And I wasn't really sure how to control it or if I should be controlling it. I mean, occasionally I could stop and like sit and look at what I've achieved and go, wow, look where we are now. But most of the time I was just quite bogged down in it, I think, in those early days, and not quite sure how I could kind of manage all the things that were suddenly on my plate. And I think that has changed with taking on some really good staff members in the past sort of 4 or 5 years that have taken things off my plate and made life easier.
Is there examples or maybe of something that you think, yeah, actually I handled that dynamic, really well in terms of your growth, and maybe one thing where you think, actually, I could have handled that better?
I think one of the things that I think we handled really well was the kind of getting back to the office after COVID thing. I was talking to a couple of friends who work for really large corporations, and it just sounds like they've completely failed to bring anyone back in any sort of cohesive whole. People are being told to come back to the office one day a month, but they're not necessarily there at the same time as anybody else. And I very much feel like that culture over time will get eroded if people don't get to meet up in real life. And actually, the whole culture thing at Wagada has been really important, and we did see that erode a little bit over lockdown. So whilst I wanted people to be able to have hybrid working and be able to work flexibly, because that's always been a big part of Wagada life anyway, sort of having young children, I've always wanted people to be able to work flexibly. I did want to kind of recapture that spirit of kind of fun and cohesiveness and everyone supporting each other that we very much had before COVID. So the way we tackled it is that we said to everyone, we are going to do hybrid working, we are going to offer flexible working, but first of all, we want everyone to come back to the office for 6 weeks so you can all remember, what it's like to work together. You can get over that fear. I think people had a fear of coming back to the office, thinking remembering it negatively, whereas actually I think it's not a negative thing. And also getting to know the people that have been recruited during lockdown, that some of them had never worked in the office, they'd never really got to know the team. And during that 6-week period, we consulted everyone individually about what they were looking for from hybrid working and managed to create kind of personal plans for everybody to make it work. And that's just been really successful. And actually, most of the team, I think, would have said they wanted to work most of the time at home if we hadn't done that. But actually, a lot of them are really happy to come back to the office because they came back, they realised their friends were here, they realised it was nice to go out for lunch, it was nice to have a chat with people. And whilst there's lots of people doing lots of different things, everyone's got their own kind of personalised plan, the atmosphere in the office is really electric at the moment, and everyone is being really supportive and really getting on very, very well. That's a good thing that we did.
I totally agree with you. The way in which employers handled that situation sort of says so much about them, I think, and it's great to hear that. But I've equally heard of other businesses where it's probably being dealt with in a quite unimaginative sort of way, like, okay, pandemic's over, everyone back to work, and let's just carry on as we did before. And those are the businesses where you're seeing a lot of turnover going on. So you've had a lot of success over the last sort of 10 years or so. I mean, do you put that down to anything in particular? Is it people? Is it the product? What is it that's happened? And at what moment did you realize, actually, yeah, this is the button I push for more success?
That's really interesting about the button that you press thing, because I'm constantly looking for that button and I feel like it keeps moving. You find the button, you press the button, you think, there we go, and then you press that button again 3 weeks later and that button doesn't work anymore. You're like, what's going on now? I think that's probably one thing that has led to our success is that we're constantly evolving. We never sit on our laurels and we never say, oh, there's the button that we press, because we're constantly looking for new things and new ways to do things, how we can improve our service, how we can improve the way we work with our clients. I think I'm someone naturally that likes change. So I quite like constantly looking for areas where we might not have done as good a job as we could have done and how we can improve. We're an organisation that very much celebrates failure. And I think that for some of the team members coming in, that's been quite difficult because they see failure as a negative thing, whereas I see failure as being a very positive thing. And it's always something I've thought about very positively through my business journey, because I failed a lot. But I think when you fail, you identify something not to do, so that you gain something. You've said, well, I'm not doing that again, so that reduces the number of options I've got now, so hopefully I'll choose the right path this time. And so one of the things that we do is we have a thing called Prosecco meetings. So when we failed, we don't always drink Prosecco, to be fair, but we have had times we've opened a bottle of Prosecco and we've shared it. And it's just about celebrating that failure and saying, this is exciting. We've failed, we've discovered something we shouldn't be doing. That's brilliant. Now we can find some really positives out of this and some things we should be doing. And it's a really good thing. So yeah, and I think this team we've got now really do embrace failure and do get the whole concept of getting excited by what you can learn from failing.
What a refreshing outlook on this. And yet, you hear about this in certain industries, like, I know in the airline industry, for example, they have to sort of you can't embrace failure because there are severe consequences of failure in the airline industry, but they are very open about it, at least. And because they have to be, because, that's how faults in an airplane get reported. Nobody tries to cover things up. And I mean, when you talk about things like that, though, for somebody who's coming into your business, do they look at you slightly askance and go, well, I've never worked anywhere like this before, where you open a bottle of bubbly?
Yes, no, I think they think there's some sort of trick somewhere, and that there'll be some sort of punishment at the end of the drinking of the prosecco. There'll be some sort of punishment, but absolutely not. I think we can learn so much by what we didn't do quite right. And I think there doesn't need to be a blame culture. There can be a positive experience around learning what not to do.
So if you, the Cheryl of 2022, was talking to the Cheryl the day you started your business, what would you be advising yourself to do?
I think I would definitely aim higher. I think I definitely didn't aim high enough. I remember thinking about where I could take my business, and I thought very small, and I didn't aim as big as I could have done. I think there's definitely something about aiming for the sky and getting to the top of the tree, and I think we can all have a bit more faith in ourselves to be able to aim a bit higher. I think, I was saying about how I, had to upskill as the business grew. I didn't think I was capable of running a business of 20 people, but actually you become capable when you're forced into that situation.
I mean, I'm interested in that whole thing around sort of thinking bigger. Was there a moment where you realized that along the way, and did things get bigger as a result? If you were thinking bigger, did it suddenly get bigger?
Yeah, I don't know whether it suddenly just got bigger because of it, but I think my business has just grown organically. I think we've made a lot of changes as we've gone along, and we have focused on growth goals, so we have kept growing. But I think if you think bigger, you can plan better for that growth rather than finding yourself in a situation where you have that growth and you didn't really expect it. So I think that's probably where I've been throughout my business journey. We've got a financial director working for us at the moment, just on a consultancy level, and he works for quite a large organization, and so he has very much encouraged us to think big, because he's in that world where he works for a business that turns over I don't know how many, hundreds of millions of pounds. So he is very much thinking big, and it's been really refreshing working with him, because he has made it very clear that there's nothing holding us back apart from ourselves. So and because we're now thinking big, we're now planning big, so we're possibly recruiting people, that next layer of management before we need it, rather than waiting till we start kind of, breaking at the seams that we desperately need, to bring new managers in. So that's been a really useful experience.
So you've had a lot of success the last sort of 10 years or so. Are there any things that you're working on at the moment that aren't sort of trade secrets that you'd like to sort of tell us about, you're particularly excited about? Your business itself, as you said, has evolved quite a lot, but what's the new frontier for Wagada?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things. So obviously, as you know, Trevor, we've just opened an office in Cheltenham about 18 months ago. So we're very busy trying to make those relationships in Cheltenham that we made in St Albans and in Hertfordshire. I very much see the value in those relationships. So we're keen to do that in Cheltenham, and it's been quite exciting building the team in Cheltenham. We've got 4 people over there at the moment, and it's been really nice to be able to recruit in the both areas, because we all know that recruitment is so difficult at the moment. Which comes on to my second thing, which is a service that we brought out in the past year or so for clients, which is around employer branding. Obviously our main aim has always been to help our clients to get more customers, but actually one of the things we've noticed is that we're getting more customers for our clients, and then they're struggling because they haven't got the staff to service those customers. So we brought out a new service where not only do we help them to get more customers, we help them to get more staff as well, and help them to use digital marketing to promote themselves in a way that makes them look attractive to potential staff members, and to get people excited about wanting to work there, possibly even before they started looking for a job. So they're already thinking that's the next company that I want to work for.
That's really, really important and exciting because, so much of the successful companies that I work with, have kind of more or less sort of aligned much more closely their external brand and their internal sort of brand about how people talk about them, within the business or coming into the business and the way they talk about those things. And there's, been incredible misalignments in the past amongst many businesses of what they appear to be and what they actually are when you sort of get inside them. So to actually combine that in one sort of set of offers is I'm sure is tremendously valuable to businesses. Cheryl, how can people find out about you and Wagada? What's the best way for people to get in touch?
So if people want to find out a bit more about Wagada, it's probably best to go on the website, which is wagada.co.uk. So it's Wagada. Otherwise, people can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm really happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn and chat to anyone who wants to have a conversation.
So when I talk to you in 10 years, 10 years time, again, hopefully we'll talk before that, but what would you have hoped would have happened? Or is that just too far away to even contemplate at the moment?
No, we've got big plans for the next 5 to 10 years. We're very much focused on growing the business, on very much attracting larger clients. A lot of our clients are nationwide, but very much nationwide big names, and building the team. Obviously, that team of experts is crucial to us to being able to offer the high quality service that we offer. We're planning on being at least double the size in the next 5 years.
Well, I just love the idea of Cheryl and her team cracking open the bubbly when things go pear-shaped. It's so important to learn from failure. And other things I picked up were the need to hire people who are better than you are and having the faith in yourself to aim higher. If you think big, you can start to plan big. So well done to Cheryl and her team, and I hope we'll be talking to her again in the near future. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate the podcast or review it through your usual podcast provider. And if you want to find out more about the Merri-Cast or our business Merriborn Media, you can find us on LinkedIn or email me at trevor.meriden@merribornmedia.co.uk. Don't forget to join us for our next episode, but until then, thanks for listening.